What's up guys, Kik here, back with another video. Today for you guys, I'm back with part 2 of this document. Once again, I'll leave this document down in the description box below, along for email. You can email us at themonies@gmail.com for private consultation. And without further ado, let's get back into this. So what is the connection to the Americans in modern time and history, and the efforts of our greatest teachers to reacquaint us with this marvelous and most useful history? As witnessed through his activity, Noble Drew Ali had to be very aware of these histories and began to implement repair on our people by repairing the root of our people through a knowledge of self as he knew it at the time. This great work continued in the Nation of Islam. In an interview placed in the Muhammad Speaks newspaper on March 23, 1933, Brother Fletcher Majed, a member of the Nation of Islam during the 1930s, serves as a witness that these ancient histories were taught openly in the early 20th century by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He speaks of the same red flag from a lecture he heard from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the early 1930s, which will serve as further proof that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was well aware of the secret relationship that Islam has with the establishment of the American government and the prehistory of the American government. Brother Fletcher Majed said he came to the Oddfellows Hall at 33rd and State for the first time in the fall of 1933. The messenger told us about this white man, John Hawkins, and how he brought our forefathers here. He said that John Hawkins anchored his ship down the Nile River. He was flying our flag when he was sailing the banks of the Nile River, where our people were doing trade. Our flag was flying. Our flag was red. Freedom, justice, and equality. When he got out to sea, they lowered our flag. The Moors dominated trade in this period. Trade was dominated by the Moors from the west and north coast of Africa to the Gulf of Mexico before the Inquisition of the Spanish and slow deterioration of the Moors and Islamic influence. Even in the mid-1700s, the real was the unit of currency used in Mexico and Islamic influence. Even in the 1700s, the real was the unit of currency used in Mexico, which is the present standard currency of Saudi Arabia. This trade became fully interpreted when the United States developed an independent Marine Corps and Navy in the 1800s. They fought wars against the Moors, Barbary wars, and eventually won out in these confrontations. They later fought wars against our people in Mexico. An axiom. The hymn of the Marines declares that they have fought from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, referring to the exploits by the United States Marine Corps in the Mexican War in campaigns against the Barbary pirates of North Africa. Those Barbary pirates and some of the so-called Mexicans were the Moors. The Black Maroons, Moors from Florida who had set up communities in Mexico in the mid-1800s. The cannon was also found amongst the so-called Mexicans, which was a signature weapon of the Moors and Maroons of Florida, at places like Palicaca, a city built by Maroons, Moors in Florida, and Fort Negro, where the Black Moorish chief Sonenfle Tuskeskani Abraham was captured by Colonel Dunhan Clinch. With about 2,000 men, General William J. Worth captured the road between Montegry and Saltillo, and by noon was storming Federation Hill. 6 companies of Texas Rangers charged up the hill, seized the enemy artillery, and turned the cannon on the retreating Mexican forces. The indigenous blacks in Mexico went under many names like Mestizo, Cholos, Negros, and even Indian. The term Marines comes from mare, which in Latin implies a navigator of the waters and also means black. So the Marines took the name of the people they were conquering, the Moors, a signature move of the grafted peoples. The history of the interaction of the Moors which with the right English is extensive. Our purpose in bringing this information to surface here is the subject of reparations and generally the heightening of international laws that are of extreme importance. Our ancestors had made many international treaties with the English for the protection of their citizenry and trade regulations. The Moors of the eastern part of the Islamic Empire, whose capital was seated in the western portion of Africa, Maghreb, had two treaties with Queen Elizabeth I of England as early as 1578. Islam had a major impact on Great Britain from 1558 until 1865. This is documented by researcher Nabil Matar in his book Islam in Britain. This explains why John Hawkins would have been trading amongst our people, flying the flag of the Moors/Muslims, the red flag of the ancient Moorish nation, the nation of Islam. These original black people are our ancestors. They were international agreements between these nations. This flag indeed represented as an independent nation and a lineage that spans back to the 18th dynasty of Egypt, often called Bana Israel, the offspring of Israel, the family of Amran, Quran Surah 3, Amran and beyond. The Moors were international in their commerce, and many of the members of this nation had settled in America. As we have noted, Abu Bakr, the elder brother of Mansa Musa, took 400 ships to America in the early 1300s. The Atlantic Ocean was not a barrier for our people. We were and are indigenous to both land masses. It was the black indigenous populations of Moors in the West that suffered a death blow from colonizing Europeans. Throughout the 16th and 17th centuries, while Spanish, Dutch, French, British, and Portuguese Christians were conquering indigenous populations across the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans, Islamic military power pushed the Ottomans and their North African satellites, the regencies of Tunisia, Tripoli, Libya, and Algeria, along with the Empire of Morocco, beyond the Mediterranean as far as the walls of Vienna and into English channels. This is the detailed history that has not been known by most and is at the root of the rise of Europeans in the Western Hemisphere. Islam was on the rise in the East in Europe, and as the colonizers left for freedom of religion, the freedom that they wanted was the freedom from the oppression of Christianity. They found this in the West through interaction with the ancient Moorish Empire in America. Their expansion into the West, Europeans, has buried the knowledge of the ancient indigenous Moorish Empire in America. This map shows the oceanography and general oceanic currents of the Atlantic. Our ancestors, the indigenous black peoples of the Americas and the East, were aware of these currents and used them in trade and traveled across the Atlantic from the Americas to Africa and Europe. Of course, history proves that some of our people were brought over as slaves. However, most of them were not. We have also never considered as a people that most of the prisoners of war, slaves, were taken from geographical areas of the Moorish Empire. And the international law and treaties. Salavini Dayouf, in his book Servants of Allah, points out that nearly 60% of the captured peoples during what we call slavery were Muslims. Most of us have not taken in this knowledge and perspective of the history of slavery. That this is in part due to the defeatist curriculums that have been given to us by whites and even by some black scholars. There is much proof in the settling of black people from Egypt and other empires in America prior to European colonization. These so-called Egyptians, like Moses, Pharaoh Akhenaten, are considered to be Moors, Muslims by nature, and according to the Book of Divine Contract of the Moorish Nation, Quran, and the treaties Marrakesh 1786 and 1836 specify the Quran as the law of education between Moors/Muslims and white Americans. There were also Moors from the era of Muhammad, 7th century and beyond in America prior to colonization. A decree issued in 1539 by Charles V, King of Spain, forbade the grandsons of Muslims burned at the stake to migrate to the West Indies. This decree was ratified in 1543, and an order for the expulsion of all Muslims from overseas to Spanish territories, Mexico, and North and South America was subsequently published. Why? Why would the Christian King of Spain and the Pope in Rome want all Muslims expelled from Spanish colonies overseas? Herman Cortez, a Spanish criminal who invaded Mexico in 1519, who had an inborn genius for treachery and was unbelievably cruel and brutal, boasted to the same King Charles V of Spain that he had massacred unarmed women and children in order to impose his will upon the natives. These natives were the indigenous blacks who had settled this area, with the same war tactics of the Europeans during the later wars in North America, 1800s. With the indigenous black populations were used and orchestrated here, these white Christian crusaders were kidnapping small children and breeding them. Thousands of red peoples were used to make war against the original indigenous black peoples of the land. This tactic of separation was used in the early developments of government in America and resulted in many of these red peoples being chosen as new native leaders over tribes and given land and reservations in the backdoor treaty deals. Thousands of rebellious red natives supported Cortez. Jules Cavaat, a French author of Le Berbères en Amérique, The Berbers in America, published in 1930, cites that the ethnic names of 46 and 77 examine names of inland and coastal African Berber communities match American tribes. Why were there such close associations between so-called African native tribes and ancient American native tribes in language and in culture, as well as physical appearance and genotype? Author of They Came Before Columbus, Dr. Ivan van Sertima, states in reference to Cavaat's findings, these many identities in names are not simply the result of one migration of Arabs or Africans to America, nor in fact to a one-way traffic of people and culture to the American continent. It is evident that the whites who colonized America had a plan that they codified into the laws of the Constitution under fugitive from justice clauses and the migration and importation clauses of the Constitution to allow the international crime of enslaving a people who they had international agreements not to enslave in violation of international treaties, enforcing involuntary servitude and attempts of genocide on a people and nation who inhabited America and Africa prior to the unlawful invasions of white Europeans. Our people had a nationality and land that is recorded on official record and in historical documents on both continents. Franklin enslaves all United States citizens to debt. Benjamin Franklin entered into a treaty in 1782 with King George III and his exchequer banks that the United States and the 13 chartered corporate states would be held responsible for the first payment being due November 17, 1787. This was the sole purpose for the creating of the Constitution and the new government set in operation, a function in the government where the Congress can borrow money on behalf of the United States federal government, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 2, and its subject corporations, states, and subject citizens, and then set up and incorporate a bank to give those foreign creditors interest in the labor of the people. This is where we are at now in bondage. Article 1 of that treaty states, it is agreed and certified that the sums advanced by His Majesty to the Congress of the United States under the title of a loan in the years 1778, 1779, 1780, 1781, and the present 1782 amount to the sum of 18 million of livres, money of France, according to the following 21 receipts of above mentioned underwritten Minister of Congress given in virtue of his full powers to wit, amounting to the whole 18 millions, viz. 18 million by which receipts said the minister has promised in the name of Congress, and in behalf of the 13 United States, the cause to be paid and reimbursed to the Royal Treasury of His Majesty on the 1st of January 1788 at the house of his Grand Banker at Paris, the said sum of 18 millions money of France, with interest at 5% per annum. Article VI, or I think that's 7, of this treaty made in 1782 gives a picture of why the government changed when it changed from the anti-federalist Sons of Liberty under the Articles of Confederation to the Federalists under the Constitution. The Constitution, a debt document for the United States citizens, not for Aboriginal and National of the Republic. Article 7, Supremacy Clause. All debts contracted and engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be as valid against the United States under this Constitution as under the Confederation. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made, or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution of the law or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. Senators and representatives before mentioned, and the members of the several state legislatures, and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or formation to support this Constitution, but no religious test shall be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. George Washington chops down the cherry tree, the Distillery Act of 1789, First United States Bank 1791, debt system. Washington worships Allah and confirms the empire in the east while working to destroy it in the west. This will be delivered to your Majesty by our faithful citizen Thomas Barclay, whom I name Consul for the United States in the dominions of your Majesty, and who, to the integrity and knowledge qualifying for him in that office, unites with the peculiar advantage of having been the agent through whom our treaty with the late Emperor was received. I pray your Majesty to protect him in the exercise of his functions to the patronage of the commerce between our two countries, and of those who carry it on. May that God, whom we both adore, bless your Imperial Majesty with long life, health, and success, and have you always great magnanimous a friend under his holy keeping. Written at Philadelphia, the 31st day of March, in the 15th year of our sovereignty and independence, from your good and faithful friend. Go Washington, the President Jefferson. Washington changes the government. The fake republic. City of New York, December 1st, 1789. Since the date of the letter within which the late Congress, by their President, addressed to the Imperial Majesty, the United States of America have thought proper to change their government and institute a new one, agreeable to the Constitution, of which I have the honor herewith to enclose a copy. The time necessarily employed in the arduous task, with the disarrangements associated by so great through peaceable revolution, will apologize and account for your Majesty's not having received those regularly advised marks of attention from the United States, which the friendship and magnanimity of your conduct towards them afforded reason to expect. The United States having anonymously appointed to me supreme executive authority in this nation, your Majesty's letter of August 1788, which by reason of dissolution of the late government remained unanswered, has been delivered to me. I have also received the letters which your Imperial Majesty has been so kind as to write in favor of the United States to the Bashals of Tunis and Tripoli, and I present to you the sincere acknowledgments and thanks of the United States for this important mark of your friendship for them. We greatly regret hostile disposition of those regencies toward this nation who have never injured them is not to be removed on terms of our power to comply with within our territories they are not mines, whether with gold or silver. And this young nation, just recovering from this waste and desolation of a long war, have not as yet had time to acquire riches by agriculture and commerce. But our soil is bountiful, and our people industrious, and we have reason to flatter ourselves that we shall become useful to our friends. The encouragement which your Majesty has been pleased generously to our comrades with your dominions, the punctuality in which you have caused the treaty with us to be observed, and the just and generous measures taken in the case of Captain Proctor to make a deep impression on the United States and confirm the respect and attachment to your Majesty. It gives me great pleasure to have the opportunity of assuring your Majesty that while I remain at the head of this nation, I shall not cease to promote every measure that I may conduce to the friendship and harmony which happily subsist between your empire and them, and shall esteem myself happy in every occasion of convincing your Majesty of the high sense in which, common with your whole nation, I certain the magnanimity, wisdom, and benevolence of your benevolence. May the Almighty bless your Imperial Majesty, our great and magnanimous friend, with his consistent guidance and protection. Tributary duties of the United States to Moorish Empire. The United States paid $20,000 for the Treaty of Marrakesh. The seal of the Emperor was placed on the treaty originally written in Arabic. Act pertaining to the U.S. Navy, March 3rd, 1791. United States Statutes at Large, First Congress, Session 3. An act making an appropriation for the purpose therein mentioned. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled, that for the purpose of effecting a recognition of the Treaty of the United States with the new Emperor of Morocco, there be and hereby appointed a sum not exceeding $20,000 to be paid out from the moneys which prior to the 1st day of January tax shall arise from the duties imposed upon spirits distilled within the United States, and from stills by the act enacted, an act repealing after the last day of June next, and the duties therefore laid upon distilled spirits imported from abroad, and laying others in their stead, and also upon spirits distilled within the United States, and for appropriating the same, together with the excess of duties which may arise from the duties imposed by the said act on imposed spirits beyond those which would have been arisen by the act entitled, an act making further provision for the payment of the debts of the United States. And the President is hereby authorized to take a loan, the whole sum by this act appropriated, or so much thereof as he may judge requisite, act and interest not exceeding 6% per annum, and the fund established for the above-mentioned appropriation is hereby pledged for the payment of the principal and interest of any loan to be obtained in the manner aforesaid. And in any case of any deficiency in the said fund, the faith of the United States is hereby pledged to make good such deficiency. Approved March 3rd, 1791. The Treaty of Marrakesh of 1786 between Caliph Muhammad Adin Abdullah, Islamic leader of Moorish Empire, Maghrib, and the United States of America. This first page contains the seal and introductory articles of the treaty made in June of 1786 and later translated in 1787. The Arabic original and English translation protects all Muslims Moors from enslavement. Most of the 57%, according to the Divine Dalouf's book, Servants of Allah, last captured in the slave trade were citizens of Islamic nations / Moorish nations that recognized the Caliph of the Moorish Empire. The enslavement of those Moors Muslims was a violation of national and international law. The Moors of the West, who are misnamed Indians and Negroes, were also receiving tributary payment from King George III, and his colonies. When they, whites, did not pay, their citizens were held captive. In the Book of Life of Charles Thompson, the history of the Black Limini, Nadakunt Moor Shakum Sahim, Tadishlong is discussed, and the tribunary payment of the whites and Tuliskrong's choosing of Charles Thompson to act as secretary in respect to the interactions between the Moors, misnamed Indians and Negroes, and the white British subjects. Here are the records from the book The Life of Charles Thompson. Life of Charles Thompson. Loway, Masters, Strickland, and Gibbons. The Indians came to the number of 300, representing 10 tribes. Tedishlong, a chief of Delawares, was appointed to speak for them in the conference. The Friendly Association, organized by a member of prominent Quakers in 1756, had a great influence upon the negotiations of this treaty. The purposes of this body are set forth by the Gore and his history of the people called Quakers as follows. The Friendly Association was first promoted in the 11th month, 1756, and continued to the 19th of the 4th month, 1763, during which time committees were annually elected by the subscribers, who met on the 19th of the 4th month in each year to receive from the said committee an account of their transaction and expenditure of the money raised, which amounted to 4,004 euros, I think, which was chiefly laid out in presents to the Indians and delivered to them at public treaties either by the governments of Province, Mortis, and Denny on behalf of the subscribers or the commissionaries. Or knowledge of the said governors, as well as to consolidate the minds of the Indians, as to encourage them to seek out and release the captives remaining among them. 430 euro of the above sum was contributed by the Mennonites, who entrusted to the care of the said association, and besides the above contributions, the sum of 236 euro was raised by a number of religious Germans called Schwickenfelders, which they directed to be applied for the particular purpose of the redemption of captives. The Friendly Association desired to send representatives to the conference at Easton, but the governor denied the request. Some of the leading members of the association then prompted Tedishlong to demand a secretary of his own choosing to take the minutes of the treaty. The governor was complied to accede to the demand on the threat of the Indian chief to retire from the conference. Charles Thompson of Philadelphia was once appointed secretary, and he soon won the confidence of the Indians by his truthfulness and his efforts to secure justice for the various tribes. In the treaty of the preceding year, Tedishlong delivered an eloquent oration of the wrongs of his nation, but those parts of his speech were reflected on the conduct of the provincial government were omitted in official reports. Thompson Moor by nature and nationality. Oldest hieroglyphic of the name Moors. Temple of Luxor, Tamori, so-called Egypt Kemet. Source Dr. Muta Ashby. Netameri. In the Kemetan teaching of devotional love, God is termed Medi, beloved one. All life came from the black waters of Nu, called space, or the neuron soup, the Nitru or Netrahu, which is where Negro is derived from etymologically. Narrative. The word that we commonly use, and word also comes from the ancient glyph Negus or Niglus. Neglus is the hieroglyphic for the black people of Africa. We were the first ones to call ourselves by these names, and we understood their cosmic biochemical meaning. Here is the glyph. The most honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches that all of the original indigenous people are Muslim by nature, not by religion. Prophet Noble Ali was the first to teach this to our people after we had experienced slavery. The word Muslim is derived from the Arabic ma or mayu, which stems from the Egyptian Sumerian mayu, which meant waters. The root stem slim implies peace, or musaham, which means a being who is derived from al-ma and is a being of peace. The waters that we are derived from are the twofold spiritually and scientifically. The first is dealing with the placenta and are origin from the waters from the womb of our mothers, the woman. The second aspect deals with a verse of spiritual science from the Quran. In Surah 21, Al-Anbiya, the Prophets, verse 30, it is most often translated as, Do not those who disbelieve see that we created from water, Alma, every living thing. Durah 2 Al-Bahra, the splitting verses 21 and 22. O nations, serve your nourisher and sustainer, the one who created you and those from nations before you, that you may guard against evil, who made the earth a resting place and constructed the heavens, reveals revelation from the heavens, then brings forth from it fruits in order to sustain you, so you do not set up rivals to Allah while you know. The messianic mental baptism of the Blackamoor initiate into universal serious mysteries. Isis, Syria's spiritual law, and Nephthys, Syria's sea commerce lineage, were said to be weeping for the death of Osiris, Sirius B, execution of law, as is so often the case with Messianic symbolism. The secrets of baptism are often involved with ancient Egyptian iconography and hieroglyphics. In this image, the gods are portrayed as weeping as they are throwing drops of sacred water. The Egyptian hieroglyphic MST, which looks like the threefold fall of water, actually means dew, and portrays drops of water falling from heaven. The same hieroglyphic also means instruction or teaching. The 19th century Messianic scholar John Simpson believed that the second values of Egyptian hieroglyphics were more closely linked with the Hebrew language than with the Coptic. He was widely believed. When examining the hieroglyphic MST, he pointed out that the Hebrew IRE means to throw drips of water to sprinkle, and to teach or instruct. IRE is related to the eye in the English and Latin, and it is the eye of Horus that is seen over the pyramid representing the great architect. He further pointed out that his hieroglyphic is linked with Egyptian baptism, with the notion of shedding celestial dew on the head of the neophyte, that is, with initiation. In support of his argument, he examined a plate which showed an Egyptian imitation scene, where the gods Horus and Thoth pour sacred waters on the head of the neophyte. The one who initiated in his way by water and fire, he was called in Hebrew Msche, Mishi, meaning something like begotten, also saved or born again, a word relevant in the new state of the neophyte who has been initiated. According to Simmons, the Egyptian hieroglyphic equivalent of this Mishi or Moses incorporated the image for dew, baptism, or celestial tears. It was the anointing of a master. Those who have been translators of the original Qur'an language of the Blackamoors, now called Arabic, of the Quran, need a knowledge of clear, untempered history in respect to Prophet Muhammad and his indigenous Blackamoors Israelite ancestry and lineage to the 18th dynasty of Aramia, as well as a better grasp of the original meaning of the authors of the language, of the verses of the Quran, in order to get the full spiritual science and its truth out of these verses and others. Element water, H2O, is definitely the substance that is the basis for some molecular, organically living things. However, before the combination of a hydrogen atom and an oxygen atom, there was life force, power, and motion operating in this universe. Alma in this verse is referring to what we call today ether, which is a form of the permeable water, plasma, or dark matter of space. It was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that taught his students that in the first atom of the universe was created from space. His theology of time lecture series in ancient Egypt. In space, the primeval waters was called the waters of none by the Amara dynasty. So, by the spiritual and scientific makeup of the universe, we are all Muslim Moor. No Arab scholar will ever explain Islam like this to black people or their own people because they have been too deceived by their own scholarship. Some are a part of the rich bloodsuckers of the poor, the class called the 10%, teachers of a mystery god. They are aligned in the satanic conspiracy to deprive us of our full and complete freedom. Surah al-Rums, the Romans, 30:30, HQ. So set up your person for the upright faith, the nature and origination of Allah in which He has originated the nature of the people. There is no altering Allah's creation. That is the faith of the resurrected ones, but most people do not know. This verse states that Allah's God's nature is Islam, and our person's self should be directed towards that nature. The last time we ruled as a people, we lived by this supernatural science and culture. Since our demise, an enemy has done everything possible to keep us out of the true knowledge of the true history of the last time we black people ruled the planet and the knowledge of what governing body of law we use in our societal rule. This was just over 500 or to 200 years ago, and Islam, the untempered Quran, were the basis of our government. Today we are split up into parties, sects, and tribes, organizations, and nations at variance with one another, which is a sign that we are still slaves, that we have been mastered by Set the Separator, the satanic elite. The colonialized religion we have been taught, which in essence is the falsification of the most important histories, has filtered over into our political movements, family life, and every other domain of our existence. In order to heal this situation, we must destroy these false historical and religious concepts. We must deal with the most important historical events and peoples that have shaped and constructed our present realities. These histories are given in the Bible and Quran, which is why the Bible and Quran are so attractive in the populace of the earth who seek the truth. We must study the teachers from the source of power, the people who have given the most profound and freedom-activating truths. Anything else is another loop in deception. If our primary goal is total freedom, we need the truth of Allah, God equals self. A. The Moors and Islam's first redeemer in America, Noble Drew Ali. Black people in general have not learned most applicable truths of their greatest leaders, which means that most of us has missed our nation's greatest blessings. How many of us has never known the man pictured above, Noble Drew Ali? Do you know why? It is the same reason why historically black colleges would never teach independent city planning, military warfare, and independent law for black people. A great part of Noble Drew Ali's mission deals with law and government. The works of Noble Drew Ali and the Moorish Americans of the Moorish Science Temple of America, and the work of reintroducing black people to our historical indigenous Islamic legacy, bringing the idea of nationalizing us as a nation under our new status and citizenship, bringing the process of informing to our domicile indigenous Islamic history here in the Americas and Exum, and throughout the world, was and is profound work that is directly related to the subject of reparations / restoration. This gives us much to discuss in regards to Islam's true connection to the United States and international government, religion, and the general and specific histories that will play an important role in the next few years of the most event-altering period in history. The public school curriculums and even Black History Month fanfare of the United States education system do not teach of Negro Ali and the great work associated with the Moorish history in America. Why? Is it in any way connected to the present war on terror? Let's see if the black man practicing the high spiritual science of Islam is a threat to the corrupt governmental establishment in the United States. In his Holy Quran circle, Ali stated his sole purpose: the Moorish-sized Temple of America deriving its power and authority from the great Quran of Muhammad to propagate the faith and extend the learning and truth of the great Prophet of Ali in America, to appoint and consecrate missionaries of the Prophet and establish the faith of Muhammad in America. This man plays a very important role in history. He is the first teacher of the original faith, God's faith, religion, that old-time religion, with submission to the will of Allah, God. Alright, I'm gonna end off here, guys. That was a long video. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll leave a link this down in the description box below. Along with email, you can email us at themonies@gmail.com for private consultation. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys next video. Have a nice day.